Sounds like you're happy to be back, David. Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church. And before we launch into this service, I've got to just kind of stop myself and stop everybody here and just pay a profound thank you to Harold Strong for a wonderful, successful summer for Harold, stand up. I think you have the makings of a fine minister. I hope that this summer has been a time of renewal for all of you. And renewal can mean so many things. For me, it hints at reshaping our lives, changing our habitual routines long enough to experience a yearning for the new. Now, if all of us had such an experience this summer, or at least close, I'd like to think how exciting this new church year will be as we launch new programs in social justice and new ways of reaching out with warmth and kindness to one another. May our summer renewal spill over into congregational life as we go forward as one nifty congregation in Salt Lake City, Utah. Nifty. When was the last time I used the word nifty? That's a... symbol of light and of knowledge, symbol of warmth and freedom. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. Here we gather to celebrate hope and the infinite possibilities of love. May we open our service this morning, turning our hymn books, please, to number 347.
Sacrifice will kindle one flame in this the mystery of this hour. This life appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, passion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the
I invite you now to take a moment to turn in silence towards that which you find most holy, for prayer, for meditation, and for reflection. We have arrived. We are arriving. As our bodies settle into this moment, this place and time amidst these people, we have arrived. We are arriving. On the cusp of summer's lip, spilling out its last drops towards autumn. Some of us arrive lighter and lesser, others greater and gaining. Less hair, less cares, less hope, less family, less love, less fear, less coldness, less love or employment, less worry. Some of us arrive more family, more children, more love, more weight, more worries, more debt, more illness, more hope, more inspiration, more certainty, more skepticism. We have arrived. We are arriving, more or less. Here and now, in these moments of silence and stillness, of prayer and reflection, help us to come into our minds, bodies, spirits, and to know how and who we are, more or less. Thought, feeling, sensation, known and unknown, what we do, what we fail to do, what we say we believe, and what we refuse to acknowledge. Here and now in this beloved community, we become present to life, our own, others, and the larger life calling to us, body, mind, spirit, more or less. To these imperfect words, we add the silent intentions of our hearts and minds. Shalom, salam, amen, and blessed be. Every year, the turn of seasons brings with it various routines and rituals in our lives. Maybe certain chores to be done around the house, certain wardrobes to be taken out or put away, a new summer do, perhaps. Our reading actually for today, comes to us from a Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Lynn Unger. She is currently the Minister for Lifelong Learning at the Church of the Larger Fellowship, I believe is our largest congregation. It's a virtual one that people log into online, become members of. They have weekly worship services, small group ministries that are virtual online. And Lynn Unger I met as a minister at Second Unitarian Church in Chicago when I was there for seminary. She's also a great poet, and she offers this piece as a remnant on the edge of summer called Picking Blackberries. What will you give for a taste of summer's last sweetness? This jeweled crown of thorns rings every path and highway. No use pretending you have not heard sweet temptation chatter through the vines. Taste, eat. Put your hand in the thorns and come out dripping juice, king's purple spread from hand to tongue. Reach gently, or you will find your thumb full of thorns and your pail full of unbearable tartness. Reach gently, but reach. The sweetest berries hide toward the inside, hidden beneath leaves barbed like critics. Balance, if you must, precariously, held by will and longing from the net of thorns. If you want the ripest fruit, relinquish safety. Guard yourself only with these words: peril, abundance, whispered like a prayer through purple lips.
tough to follow that crashing ending. Wow. A moment to welcome everyone again with special attention to those who are new for the first time or relatively new. A warm welcome to you, and I hope that following the service you will stay for coffee and have a chance to meet with Matthew and me and introduce yourselves, and hopefully we can start a conversation that will continue for a long while. Have a couple of important announcements because, hey, it's church, and so of course there are announcements. One that I hope that you really take to heart, and that is we are in the process of partnering with the Volunteers of America, who have a shelter for homeless teens. And our end of the partnership is to provide meals for these teenagers. They run approximately from ages 15 to 18, or maybe even 19. They have a wonderful facility on 9th South and 400 West, and they have a great industrial kitchen, and they need communities like ours to come in and cook for about 50 people, be it breakfast, be it lunch, be it dinner. And we are now in the process of organizing this and hope very much that this opportunity is met with a lot of enthusiasm from the whole congregation and endorsements. So we need not only cooks, because too many cooks in the kitchen will spoil whatever it is that we're preparing, but we also need helpers, those who will do the dishes, those who will clean up, those who will kind of set up the meal. So anybody is really welcomed, and I think it's going to be a real positive experience for everyone. So right at the welcoming table, which is right outside this door after the service, there is a sign-up sheet. It is not a sheet that will commit you to preparing breakfast for every morning for the rest of your lives. It's really just now doing we're kind of taking the pulse of the interest of members of our church. So please sign up and circle if you're more interested in breakfast, in lunch, in dinner, and then you will be contacted by this newly forming emerging committee, and hopefully we'll all have a significant part to play in a new social justice adventure that will serve us and serve a community of homeless teens in our city. For activities that take place within our congregation, nothing is, I think, more powerful and creative and fun than what we call small group ministries, which is a program that has been going on for countless years, probably at least a dozen years or so. And this is now the time for us to register for the small group ministry. It's a commitment of once a month. You are in a small group, and you come together in groups of maybe 10 to 12 and discuss a fascinating subject and get to know your fellow First Unitarian folks on a more personal level. And it's a tremendous and a very successful program. You can register online. If you feel like there may be some obstacles for registering online, please see John Rasmussen. John, could you just stand up for a second? John is the man. Register with John. He'll take down your information, and hopefully the small group ministry will continue bigger than ever. Next Saturday, there will be a rally at the State Department. It's going to be a registration drive from 12 to noon. Everybody is welcome there. Registration drive, as you know, is key. And the subtext for this coming together is to lobby for gun control. And we need obviously new measures in dealing with guns. So next Saturday, 12 o'clock, see you at the state capitol, and there's more information. Joan Gregory has some information at her table, and hope we make it. So, in order not to make this a whole hour of announcements. Let's bring that to a close at this time, and the offering will gratefully be received, and a chance for you to greet one another and bid each other welcome back to the regular church services. Now, it's been a long time since I shared with you the news from Bolinas, California, an idyllic coastal community an hour north of San Francisco. And for the last 20 years, Mary and I returned there for an infusion of the Spirit and reminders about common sense living. This summer, as I noticed the broiling 3-digit temperatures in Salt Lake City, and I needed a sweatshirt minimally just to stay warm in Bolinas, I told Mary that when it comes to weather, we're in the 1%. Now, I've not intentionally avoided my old ritual of bringing you the news from Bolinas on the first Sunday of the new church year. It's just that not much ever really happens there, which is part of the charm. But let me quickly bring those of you who are unfamiliar with Bolinas on board. Time essentially stopped there in 1968 when hippies arrived to clean up an oil spill on the Bolinas beach. And they soon realized that they outnumbered the townspeople, and so they stayed and took over the town. Never moved. And all these decades later, the locals still travel by VW buses. Many live in refurbished school buses. And the town is overrun with guys sporting gray beards and long gray ponytails, at least those who are fortunate enough to do so. There are no road signs pointing the way to Bolinas. They were all torn down years and years ago by the self-appointed Bolinas Border Patrol. And the state of California has abandoned the idea of offering directions to help people find this small community just south of Point Reyes Peninsula. Dogs roam freely in Bolinas, walking down from the mesa by themselves to congregate in front of Smiley's, a saloon established in 1851. Built in the Gold Rush years, it provided a place to drown the sorrow of shattered dreams. It still kind of serves that purpose today. Now, my dog might visit with some of the local dogs, but he's hell-bent in reserving a place in line at the little coffee station run by the Coast Cafe just across from Smiley's. My dog, Bo, eagerly joins Mary and me for a blueberry muffin, which we take with us on our walk along the shoreline, which is usually around 7 in the morning. A perfect time to comb the beach while watching the tide roll out. The morning light cast over the rippling ocean is really a profound invitation to stop what the Buddhists call monkey mind, and to engage in appreciative contemplation. While online for coffee, we chat with the locals. It's never about news or politics, but most likely about what we're hoping the fishermen will catch that day for dinner. Occasionally, a homeless person will come right to the front of the line and receive a cup of coffee gratis. It's no big deal, just customary. That's how the people in Bolinas operate. Now, when the trawlers come in sometime in the afternoon, the market will give Mary a call and tell her what's just come in and hold her order until we pick it up closer to dinner time. The heads are still on the fish, which chases me out of the kitchen. But I'm repeatedly struck how remarkable the woman I married. Between the market and the Coast Cafe is the shrine. It was erected immediately following 9/11. And that's where we learn the personal news around town, for whom the flowers are intended as a memorial, where people jot down their thoughts and wishes about the planet, about peace, and they note who's facing hard times and whom we need to keep in our prayers. There's a piano at Smiley's, which everyone is prohibited from playing except the homeless. And sometimes we're treated to a wave of cacophony, and sometimes we're pleasantly surprised. And in that space between the community center and the organic food store, you'll find the Bolinas Free Box, which is always open. It holds lovely clothing and toys and bikes for people and children to take if they need them. Nobody supervises the transactions at the Bolinas Free Box. It's always been open ever since Mary and I entered this strange Bolinas world. But here's the news from this incredible enclave of artists, musicians, writers, and fishermen. You need to realize first that probably the last time anyone voted there was in 1968 for Gene McCarthy, and they've been disillusioned with politics ever since. But there seemed to be a small but growing political pulse once again. Perhaps our times demand it. In the boutique, situated in the bend of the road just before you get to the Bolinas Art Museum, you see colorful children's lettered blocks made of cloth. And they are displayed in the window so that it reads Black Lives Matter in children's blocks. In another quaint shop featuring a tugboat meant for a child's bath, the item is placed on a slab, tugboat's placed on a slab, and under it, it says, "Bernie floats my boat." Now, this is new stuff for Bolinas. And for the very first time, I noticed, and this is so unusual, political signs in the windows of just about all of the modest houses there declaring Bernie for president. But we were there following the Democratic National Convention, and so we realized that all these little homes added one word to that sign. On top of the sign, it says "still." So it reads, "Still Bernie for president." I consider Bolinas a teaching town. It's a place where you pick up your fresh vegetables and fruit and flowers at the Gospel Flats farm stand, which is always unattended. There's a scale and a money box and you figure it out what you owe. And I wonder if this will ever change. Can one teach trust and honesty? Can one still believe in trust and honesty in these times? It's like going to summer school to learn the basics of how human communities can function if they establish a few basic principles. It reminds me of the social contract that we have tragically lost sight of in our rampant pursuit of self-interest. Berlinus holds capitalism responsible for much of our being disconnected from one another, as evident on the cover of your order of service, featuring a sample of graffiti that adorns the seawall. But Berlinus represents just one of the many lessons gained this summer. The Olympics in Rio as well might have been a course in summer school. Not only did I learn that watching beach volleyball is addictive, but also that athletes who are the best in the world, and I can't even imagine what that feels like, being the best in the world. But it was so clear that they pay a personal price, a heavy toll in what they have sacrificed during training and all the stress that they have endured to clutch a medal. And we also saw that lying about a robbery to cover one's tracks after getting plastered can cost you a whole lot of money in endorsements, no matter how fast you can swim while sober. But the Olympics offered a profound perspective on a whole new world emerging. You know, the memory lingers of one of the worst cases of genocide, where just 22 years ago, the Hutu-led tribe in Rwanda murdered around 1 million people from the Tutsi tribe. But this summer, members of both tribes joined forces in Rio in the Rwanda cycling team. And as team members, they were creating a new future for their nation. They symbolized the meaning of redemption, a concept that is more at home in religious mythology. But the Rwanda cycling team showed all spectators that an indwelling of the Holy Spirit can catch you by surprise. It can be manifest anywhere and at any time. Healing a fractured past lies within the realm of human possibility. And we learned a lot about a new world emerging by watching a U.S. Muslim woman fencing. She's from New Jersey. Her name is Ibtihaj Muhammad, and her name translates to joy. She fences in her traditional hijab, and it seems she's full of joy while fencing. As a young girl, she never joined in any sports, despite her family's, especially her parents' penchant for athletics. And finally, her mother made her a sportswoman because she told her daughter that being on a team was the best protection for a minority person. Outsiders saw the team as one group, one ethnicity for whom they cheered, rather than isolating a person individually by skin color, which would be her fate if she didn't become a member of a team. And I wondered about this lesson and how it may well apply to African Americans I thought of Simone Biles and America's love for this extraordinary gymnast on Team USA. How would she fare if she wasn't on a team? How would she fare as an individual young black woman living in Columbus, Ohio, where she and her sister were raised by their grandparents because their mom lost custody of the girls due to substance abuse? The Olympics in Rio showed the world's future in overcoming divisive Muslim and Western traditions. Again, it's beach volleyball. Egypt playing Germany. Wow, what a sight. Muslim women competing in their traditional dress, wearing long sleeves, leggings, and a hijab to cover their head, and the Germans wearing, well, not much at all. And so on our TV screens, what a statement. The cultural clash writ large. Regulating beach volleyball uniforms were enforced more loosely beginning in the 2012 Olympics in London. But Rio was Egypt's first international competition outside of the African continent. And the Egyptian women loved it. They didn't play a great game, but they qualified. Who gets to decide, anyway, what women should wear? Europe's battle over public attire for Muslim women, where burkinis have been banned in France and Germany, has outlawed face veils in schools and universities, present a barrier to the full participation of Muslim women in Western society. Conservative politicians argue as though they are concerned about the Muslim women, saying they can't integrate into Western society with traditional attire. And yet these laws, in actuality, further marginalize Muslim women, effectively forcing them to stay at home rather than easing their integration into Western society. The Olympics in Rio served as a master teacher. There they were, Muslim women covered up, competing against Western women, uncovered, going at it, toe to toe. Yes, the German women won rather handily, but it had nothing to do with what they were wearing. And the Muslim women got in a few good spikes at the net, and in the end, it didn't matter how much or how little you were covered. The point is they were both in the same game. And that's all that Muslim refugees are asking. They just want to get into the game. Summer school this year provided a good lesson in what I certainly would call poetic justice. Poetic justice contains a few necessary elements in order to be labeled as such. Of course, virtue is ultimately rewarded and vice is punished, but there's a third component that makes poetic justice seem, shall we say, especially sweet. It is accompanied by an ironic twist of fate related to the character's own action. The character in this case is Donald Trump, whose racist campaign is singularly directed as Muslims, making them the scapegoat for most of America's problems. He has manipulated fear within the mind and hearts of the American public, closing the door to Syrian refugees, closing the door to all Muslim refugees, ostensibly to keep America safe from terrorism. And as Trump was riding the crest of support for his nativist ideology, it all began to unravel quite suddenly when a Muslim man, Khizr Khan, spoke at the Democratic National Convention. Trump could never quite recover, could never fully find his equilibrium once again, began losing key Republican support when this Muslim man, whose son sacrificed his life as a U.S. soldier to save his troops, when this Gold Star father asked Trump if he knew anything about sacrifice, if he knew the Constitution, if he knew anything about how the human community really works. And Trump's continued attack against Muslims, and even this family in particular, showed many a Republican voter the vile nature of a candidate they ultimately can no longer support. And the Muslim, Khizr Khan, once a Republican himself, exposed the inhumanity of Donald Trump front and center. And the candidate, I believe, still has not recovered. Poetic justice. How sweet that really is when you connect the dots. This summer also taught me something which was actually quite personal. A few months ago, February, when Rosemary Bray McNatt spoke at our church's 125th anniversary, she and I actually continued a discussion on compassionate choices in dying, allowing people the right and dignity to terminate their own lives. Now, Rosemary, an African-American woman and president of our Unitarian Universalist Seminary in Berkeley, blew my mind when she said that she could not support the Right to Die movement. I could not imagine any Unitarian Universalist not supporting this, let alone the president of our theological school. Now, at that time, when we started our discussion, I had just written an op-ed piece which was rejected by the Deseret News. That's a long story. I'll save that for another time. But on that op-ed piece, I gave the theological justification for compassionate choice in dying. So I was prepared to argue theologically with Rosemary when she told me, Tom, stop. It's not about theology. It's about race. What? Race? And she said, yes, it was another form of genocide because African Americans received very little palliative care, if at all. And they would opt to end their lives unfairly, never having experienced what it was like to go on with lessened pain, with palliative care. I shook my head in disbelief, thinking, this could not really be the case. This summer, in a front-page New York Times article, Rosemary's assertion was confirmed. I'm going to take one sentence from the article. Researchers have evidence of racial bias and stereotyping in recognizing and treating pain among black patients. And we think we know what racism is. And we think we fight against this malignancy through our liberal rhetoric. But we haven't a clue. Just like we haven't a clue about life in a refugee camp or life as an undocumented worker. We all have our bubbles to protect and sustain us. For me, it's Bolinas. I drop in and out at whim, taking in the cool climate and admiring their honest lives. But we have so much still to learn. Now, this summer felt a lot like school. So many of our assumptions were exposed as false. And we caught a glimpse, however. We caught just a glimpse of how the world is changing and how we better catch up to it. It was a good summer for learning. The work before us seems a whole lot more clear. And I pray that our congregation will continue to build on all that we are learning. That we can continue a little wiser, more sensitive, and affirming the belief that love is stronger than fear. And so a new world of peace and justice is attainable. Because if we look real hard, we can see it beginning to emerge. So be it. Can we close our service turning our hymn books, please, to number 144. As we extinguish the chalice, let us close with these very moving words by Dorothy Day. People say, what is the sense of our small effort? They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, deeds is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's too much work to do. Amen.